Hello and welcome to another React tutorial. Today I'm going to teach you how to create this beautiful and very customizable timeline for your personal portfolio website. A while ago I made a version using a React library. This time we are going to make one from scratch using nothing but Tailwind and no other special dependencies. The timeline is very customizable. You can pretty much do whatever you want with it. After we are done, you can customize it to fit your website completely. I made this colorful version just to show what type of colors you can set, but if you want, you can choose to set a single color that fits more with your branding, such as this, or this, or this, or this, or pretty much any color that you like. So on mobile, it's going to look like this. The icon is going to be in the corner here, and the lines that were previously on the left side, there's now going to be two lines at the center, and the rest of it is pretty much the same, except for some slight font changes. Like I said, from dependencies, we are going to use only Vite to create the app and Tailwind to style it. So you can also do this pretty much with regular HTML and CSS if you want. I chose Tailwind because I want to practice working more with Tailwind and possibly incorporating it more into my tutorials. So let's dive in. To create a Vite app which has Tailwind support, you can follow the instructions from Tailwind's documentation on this URL, where you have a step-by-step guide. We're going to follow those steps. If you want, instead of NPM, you can use Yarn. I personally use Yarn, so it's your personal preference. In your chosen folder, you are going to say yarn create Vite. You will get Vite's installation. You will have to choose the name of the project. I'm going to say timeline, hit enter. I'm going to use keyboard arrows to select React, and I'm going to select JavaScript. Now we are going to do cd timeline, yarn to install all of the dependencies, and in the end, yarn dev to start the app. And we should have now app active right now. So there it is. I'm going to stop the server right now, and I'm going to continue with the installation. So this is basically the command that you need to do. I'm just going to copy paste this here. And since I am using Yarn, I'm just going to go here and say yarn. And instead of install, I'm going to say add, and the rest remains the same. So these are all the things that you are going to need for Tailwind. In the end, I'm going to copy this here. Now we need to configure our Tailwind config. I need to open the folder here. Now that I'm in my chosen folder, I'm going to open tailwind.config.js, and I'm going to copy this content part from here and replace it in my file. Copy paste, hit Control save. And now these three lines are something that we need to add to our CSS. So I'm just going to copy those. I am going to open my source. We are going to completely delete app CSS because we don't need it. And in the index CSS, we are going to select everything, delete it, and copy paste these three lines from over here and hit save. We're also going to delete this react.svg. We're going to add other stuff here in the assets folder. We can close this. In app.jsx, we are going to remove everything from here, and we're also going to remove this because we won't do anything with state. Delete everything here, and let's just say hello world. And this is a div. And now we need to start the build process. So for me, that's going to be yarn dev. And if I refresh, there is a hello world here. And to test, we can try and use the Tailwind example here. So I'm just going to paste it over here. And this is our Tailwind H1. So that's definitely working. So we're done with the setup. We can close this. So in the assets folder, I'm going to copy paste some of the assets that we are going to use, and you can find them on my GitHub. I will post the link down below. So this is the school.svg and the work.svg. So work is basically going to be used as an icon for your previous jobs, and school for your previous education location, whether it's a high school or university or something like that. And timeline elements is just a JavaScript file which exports a timeline elements property, which is an array of objects which have this structure. So these are completely placeholder items for me. You can either copy paste them from my GitHub, or you can, put your own data in here. So every element has an ID, which is just a number. It has a title. Location is just city, state. Description, which is supposed to be your description of the job or the school that you went to. Button text is if you want to set separate text for different buttons. For example, let's say your cards from the timeline are linking to your projects or something like that you worked on when you were doing that job. You can basically change this to view projects or something like that. Date is the date or timeline period when you were there. Then the icon, which marks which icon we're going to use. This is your custom color for each card on the timeline, which will be used if we don't have a default color. And the tag is the tag that you used on that job or that you learned in the school. So this is just an array of strings. And I have a few elements here. I have 5 elements, and we are exporting this timeline elements as a default, but we are doing a reverse because I basically wrote them in the wrong order. So your latest thing should be at the top. And for me, it's in reverse. So I'm doing a reverse here. If you do it manually, you won't need to reverse it. So bear that in mind. And straight in the source folder, I'm going to create a timeline.jsx, which is going to be our component. I'm going to initialize it as a functional component. We're going to delete this, and in the app we are going to import the timeline. So import timeline, and instead of doing h1, we are going to return our timeline. So there it is. As I mentioned, we are going to use a default color, so that's going to be our only prop that we are passing potentially to the timeline. So I'm going to say default color. And the way this works is, since we are using Tailwind, the challenge for me here was to create everything using just Tailwind. For the default color, we need to use Tailwind supported color. So I'm just going to write bg dash, and let's do cyan dash 500. And going into the timeline, we are going to destructure the default color here. And at the top here, we are going to import first our timeline elements. So import timeline elements from assets timeline elements. And we are also going to import our icons. So import school icon from assets school svg, and we're going to use the same thing for our work. So work icon and work. These are just some SVG icons that I used in my previous tutorial with the React library, where I use these same icons. So if you want to use different icons, you can feel free to do so. And now what we're going to do is, instead of having timeline here, we are simply going to spread our timeline elements, or rather to map through our timeline elements. So let's say element, and let's say return div element dot title, and this needs to go into curly braces, element.title. So we have our titles here, and we need to add a key here, which is going to be our element.id. Before returning anything, we are going to set up our color that is going to be used. So we're going to have a const color, which is going to be either the default color if we have it, or if we don't have it, it's going to be a Tailwind color. So Tailwind color that needs to be combined with the color that we are passing through. So we are going to say backticks bg dash $, curly braces, color, and outside you're going to say dash 500. Since my colors are red, orange, yellow, purple, and blue, I'm basically creating Tailwind colors, which for background colors are bg dash the name of the color dash a number, which represents the shades of that color. If you create your colors in the JS file to be exactly Tailwind colors, then you don't need to do this, but I didn't do it, so I am doing it like this. The caveat is that this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work because of the way Tailwind sets up its colors, but we can make it work. In order to make it work, and I believe this is a hack basically for Tailwind, we are basically just going to define our colors as an array here, and somehow this is now going to work. Colors are defined in the file itself. Tailwind is going to see this and it's going to be fine with it, with them being generated this way. But like I said, if you want to be sure, just use these colors instead of the red. Use bg-red 500 or whatever that you want. There is a great page called Tailwind CSS cheat sheet, and you can basically find everything here. And if we search for colors, you can find the background color and you will find all of the supported colors here. So for us, BG red 500 would be this color. BG yellow 500 would be this color. BG blue 500 would be this color, etc, etc. So in Tailwind, setting up the classes or Tailwind properties is being done through class name. So we're going to say class name and we are going to start implementing stuff here. Or actually we are going to return to our app here and we are going to wrap our timeline here into a div. If you are implementing your timeline to your website, you don't need to do this. I'm doing this just for presentation purposes, just so I can have this nice and centered. So I'm just going to apply some styles to make it centered and to make the background darker and stuff like that. So we're just going to say flex call, which means it's going to have display of flex, and flex direction is going to be columns. Justify center, items center. We're going to say BG gray 900, which is going to be the background color. Text is going to be text white. Text base, which means it's going to have the base font size. We are going to say PB8, which is padding bottom of 8. And we're going to say sm::text.lg. This is basically Tailwind's media query, which says if this is larger than small screen, then we are going to use this. Else, if there is a similar property, and we do have a similar property, use this. So Tailwind is mobile first, so SM doesn't mean use this on mobile, it means use this if this is bigger than mobile. We are basically saying use the base text on mobile and use large text elsewhere. And we are going to go back to our timeline and we are going to start adding our class names here. We are going to say flex m-4, which is a margin of 4, and we are going to say relative, which is position relative, and which is going to help us because we need to implement z index in a couple of elements down the line, and for those you need to have a relative on the parent. So the first part here is going to be our icon and our date. So I'm going to delete this for now, and I'm going to say div, and inside of that div we are going to have our element.date. After that, we are going to have a helper div here, which we're going to use later for one of the lines that we need to draw. And here we are going to have our image. And below the image, we are going to have another helper div. So the image is going to have its source equal to if element.icon equals school, we are going to use the school icon, otherwise we are going to use the work icon, and we can see the icons appearing. For alt text, I'm just going to say icon, and for the class name, we're going to say the object and the backticks and $, curly braces color. We are going to say width 10, which is W-10. We're going to say P1, which is padding of 1, rounded dash LG, which is going to give it a slight or rather large border radius, and Z20, which is going to give it a Z index. In the parent container here, we are going to say class name equals to hidden, because this is going to be hidden in the smaller screens, so we need to see it on the larger screen. So I'm going to say SM flex. So now this is going to be visible on larger screens and On mobile screens, it's going to be hidden because we're going to implement it in a different way. We are going to say items start, width is going to be 44, padding top is going to be 0.5, and this is also going to have position of relative. The slight padding is just so we can align it a little bit better with the cards that are going to go here later. The date is also going to have a class name, and we're going to say width is going to be 4/5, text gray 500. And we are going to come back to these two a bit later because there's no point in implementing them now when we don't have the rest of the stuff. And we are also going to have two helper divs here for other lines. So I'm just going to copy paste those there. So this div here is going to be our main card. And in there, we are going to have 4 divs, div 4 times, and we are going to have an image and a link tag. So the image is going to be the image that we are going to use on mobile, and the anchor tag is going to be our button. And these are going to have our element dot title. Here is going to be our element dot location. And also next to the location, we are going to have a span, which is going to have this upper line, vertical line, and in curly braces, element dot date. And we are going to use this only on mobile. So in here, I'm going to say class name SM hidden, because this is only going to be visible on mobile, because we are going to basically remove these and move them into the card itself. In here, we are going to have element dot description. And in the last div, we are going to map through our text. So element dot tech dot map, and we're going to say tech, and we are going to add the index here. And we're going to say return span, and span is going to have our tech, and it's going to have a key of index, so we can see all the tech in there. Image is basically going to be just this image, so I'm going to paste it here, but we are going to change its width to 8, and we are going to set its position to absolute because we want to put it in the bottom left corner. And we're going to say left 4, top 4, or sorry, we want to put it at the top left corner, so left 4, top 4, and in the end we're going to say SM hidden because, like I said, we want this to be visible only on mobile. And for the anchor tag, we are going to say element dot button text, and we can now start implementing our styling for the inner elements and for the container. So we are going to start with the container. We're going to say class name, border gray 600 rounded -LG. We are going to give it a padding over the x-axis of 8, padding of y-axis to 4. We're going to say BG gray 800 for the background color. Width is going to be width full, which means 100%. Text is going to be centered, so text center. We are going to give it a Z10 Z index, and for the large screens we are going to say width is going to be 96. For element title, we're going to say text XL, font dash medium, and text center to center the text, which we actually might not need. Yeah, we don't need to do that because we have text center above. We can delete this. And here we're going to say class name, text gray 300, margin bottom of 6. And for the larger screens, we're going to say SM, and we're going to say margin bottom of 8. And another thing for larger screens is going to be SM text dash XS, which means the text is going to be smaller. As far as I know, like without making your utility classes in Tailwind, if you're doing on hover effects, if you're doing media queries, you need to put everything separately, unless you are creating your utility classes, which here and right now we are not doing. And we can move on to description, and this is just going to have margin bottom of 4, and text is going to be aligned left. And here we're going to say flex wrap, margin bottom of 6, and justify center. And for the each tag, we are going to say class name bg gray 900 rounded dash xl, padding on x of 2, padding on y of 1, text is going to be small, and we're going to give it a margin of 1. And for our anchor tag, we are going to use an object here, backticks, $, curly braces, color, text gray 950, font medium, padding x of 4, padding y of 1, rounded MD, margin over x is going to be auto, cursor pointer, and for a hover effect, we're going to say hover colon, and we're going to change the text to white. So we can see the text is changing. So if you remember, we are setting our default color here, but if we go back and we say the default color doesn't exist, so this is actually not color, but element dot color. So right now we can see this working. So if we don't have a default color, we're going to have all of these different colors that I've set, but like I said, you do you, whatever you want. For now, for this example, let's stay with the default color. We are almost there. We pretty much need to set up all of these helper divs, which are just going to be a couple of lines, and we are done. So for this one, let's say class name, and we're going to use an object, backticks, $, curly braces, color. Width is going to be 0.5, height is going to be 6. We are going to translate x by 20. We are going to translate y by 56. Opacity is going to be 60, and on larger screens this is going to be hidden. This is actually the first line for the mobile. These are just what worked for me for this example. If you want to put them somewhere else, feel free to do so. And the other one is basically going to have pretty much the same thing. So we're going to copy paste everything. And the only thing different is translate x, which for this is going to be 80. So now we have the second line here. As you can see, icon is already here. Our date is already there. So with that, our mobile version is completely finished. So now we have these two divs left, which are going to be these lines over here. So let's say class name, and we're going to say this is an object, backticks, $, curly braces, color. Width is going to be just 1 pixel, so w-px. Height is going to be 100%, so h full. We are going to translate x by 5. We are going to translate y by 10, and the opacity is going to be 30. So now we have the line that's connecting the icons, and the last div here, which is going to be a line between the icon and the card, is going to be an object, backticks, $, curly braces, color. Height is going to be 1 pixel. Width is going to be 8. We are going to do translate y by 5, and opacity is going to be 30. And this adds a slight line over here. And that concludes our desktop version. This is our desktop version. If we make the screen smaller, we get our mobile version. If we want to remove the default color, we get all of the colors here. And if we make this bigger, we get them over here as well. As you can see, this is a very easy to build component which you can plug into your website. You can customize it any way that you want to. The example that I did previously with a library had the option to make the card switch. So the timeline, basically this part here with the icon and the date, would be in the middle, and the card would be, one card would be on the left, the second one on the right, the third one on the left, etc., etc. So this is another interesting thing that you can possibly implement. Regardless, thank you very much for joining me in this tutorial. I hope you learned something new. If you did, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe if you're new. My name is Alex, and I will see you in the next one.